Hey guys, tonight we're going back to a time when doctors wore robes. Bloodletting was a household term, and if something went wrong in your body, chances were high someone blamed the moon. Yep, the actual moon. That glowing cheese wheel in the sky. Turns out it had a medical degree, sort of. And tonight we're going to walk through dim candlelit corridors, crack open some very old and very wrong books, and follow the soft sound of prayer mixed with astrology. So grab your herbal poultice, don't forget to hum your Gregorian chant, and prepare to learn more about medieval medicine than your immune system ever asked for. You probably won't survive this one awake, because even though it's full of strange theories and lunar nonsense, it's delivered in the most gentle, slow-paced way possible. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments your location and local time. I love seeing where you're watching from as you drift into medieval moon-induced dreams. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You begin in a small village. It's quiet, too quiet, that kind of suspicious quiet where the animals are restless, the air feels heavy, and someone is muttering something about the fever. You step into the main square, past crooked wooden houses and flickering torchlight. A man stumbles past holding his head, and a woman behind him whispers, "It's the moon again." You glance up. Sure enough, it's full, fat, bright, hanging too close to the treetops like it's eavesdropping. You step into a cottage lit by firelight. The local healer is inside, hunched over a bundle of herbs and a book that looks like it's been dropped in soup more than once. She's not looking at the patient on the cot. She's looking out the window. "Too much moon," she mutters, tying a knot of garlic and rosemary above the door. It stirs the humors. You sit beside the sickbed. The man is sweating. His eyes flutter behind their lids. The healer dips a cloth in a bowl of cloudy water and pats his forehead. "It's always the worst when it's full," she says. "Liver acts up. Blood misbehaves. Dreams go sideways." You glance around the room. There's no thermometer, no microscope, no stethoscope. Just bundles of dried plants, wax dripped onto pages, and the unmistakable aroma of, "We're doing our best." And here's the thing. This isn't superstition. Not entirely. It's science. Just medieval science. Mainstream historical fact. In the Middle Ages, it was widely believed that the moon governed the body in specific, measurable ways. The theory came from a mix of classical ideas, mostly Aristotle and Galen, and was deeply woven into the fabric of medicine. The moon was thought to influence blood, bile, phlegm, even how your wounds healed. The body was not a standalone system. It was a cosmic sponge, soaking up whatever the moon, stars, and heavens were doing. And scientists still argue whether these ideas were entirely baseless. Some say medieval doctors were proto-scientists doing their best with limited tools. Others argue they were overly reliant on metaphor and myth. But even today, you'll find modern ERs bracing for weird cases during a full moon. Coincidence? Or legacy? Back in the cottage, the healer opens her book of hours, flips to a lunar chart, and nods solemnly. "Tonight's not good for the liver," she says. You blink. You didn't know livers had good nights. She looks at you. "If we bleed him now, it'll draw the madness out." "Ah, the bleeding. Of course. We'll get there soon." For now the moonlight falls through the window in silver streaks. The fire crackles, and the man on the cot begins to murmur in his sleep. Soft, half-spoken nonsense. The healer presses her fingers gently to his pulse. "He'll sweat through it by dawn, if the moon allows it." You don't know if that's hope, fear, or just professional optimism. But you do know one thing. Tonight, the moon is in charge, and everyone here knows it, especially the sick, especially the healers, especially you. You step outside the cottage, the door creaking softly behind you. The moon is still there, of course, huge and silent, casting long, cold shadows across the dirt path. It's the kind of moon that feels less like a backdrop and more like a participant. You pull your cloak tighter, not because of the temperature, but because the weight of that sky feels like it's pressing gently on your shoulders. As you walk through the village, you pass shuttered windows and the occasional flicker of candlelight. Somewhere a dog howls. Naturally, you round the corner and find the town's physician, a generous term, sitting beneath an awning with a wooden board in his lap. He's sketching something with charcoal. You move closer and see a strange diagram, a human body, broken into sections, each part labeled with moon phases. He doesn't look up. Livers tied to the waning gibbous, he says, like that should mean something. You nod politely, pretending it does. He taps the drawing. Each part of the body is ruled by a planet, and the moon, well, she governs the fluids, blood, sweat, tears, maybe even thoughts if you're unlucky. You sit beside him and glance at the body chart. It's absurd and oddly beautiful. The head is surrounded by stars, the lungs shaped like crescent moons, the kidneys shaded with tide lines. Mainstream science reality. In medieval medicine, especially in the West, the body was believed to be directly affected by the heavens. This wasn't fringe thinking. It was foundational. The theory of melancholic humors connected organs to celestial bodies. The moon was associated with moisture, instability, emotion. Just as it moved the tides, it was thought to stir the liquids in your body. You watch the physician dip a feather quill into ink and carefully label, left foot, waning moon. You try not to laugh. Why the foot, you ask? He shrugs. Gravity, probably. You pause. He's not entirely wrong. Not right either. But somewhere in there, there's a thread of logic trying to find its way out. Scientists still argue whether these beliefs were purely superstition or a reflection of early attempts to systematize medicine with available tools. Some modern researchers suggest lunar correlations to sleep, hormones, or even seizure frequency, though nothing definitive. The data remains slippery, like moonlight on cobblestones. The physician offers you a mug of something steaming. You sip it. It tastes like regret and fennel. Got to balance the humors, as he says. Moon's waxing makes the bile surge. You nod, even though you have no idea what that means. He opens a small book filled with lunar calendars and scribbled notes. Some pages are stained, others torn. But on one in particular, there's a diagram of the moon's phases with tiny arrows pointing to different treatments. New moon, avoid surgery, organs are closed. First quarter, good for herbal tonics. Spleen is listening. Full moon, bleeding is risky, madness is near. Last quarter, cautious optimism, give honey. You glance up. The full moon hangs just above the chimney of a nearby house, glowing like it knows something you don't. The physician follows your gaze. She's always watching, he says. You can't cheat the moon. You try to imagine a world where that statement is normal, where the moon isn't just romantic or poetic, but medical, where your doctor doesn't check your temperature, but checks the lunar phase before prescribing peppermint oil and hope. A quirky tidbit: in some regions of medieval Europe, patients were told to sleep facing east during certain moon phases to align the fluids. Others were instructed to avoid looking directly at the full moon, lest it pull the soul toward madness. And if you sneezed under moonlight, that was a whole different problem. You hand the mug back, the steam curling between your fingers. How do you know it works? You ask. The physician shrugs. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. That's the moon for you. You look down at the chart again. The body divided into planetary zones. The phases of the moon turning across a circle like a celestial clock. There's a kind of elegance to it, even if it's wildly incorrect. You wonder what future generations will say about our beliefs. And then you hear it, a distant bell, midnight, the full moon hour. The physician closes his book. Time to pray for the spleens, he mutters. You follow him through the dark, both of you walking like people who trust the sky more than the ground. The moon shines on, as if nodding along. You follow the physician through the crooked lanes of the village, the full moon overhead illuminating every cobblestone like a spotlight that never dims. The air has a chill to it now, not from the temperature, but from the weight of collective belief. It presses into the bones of this place like fog into wool. You round a corner and see a group gathered in the town square. They're hushed, holding candles, clustering around a wooden platform. A man lies on a bench, shirt half open, cheeks flushed with fever. Beside him stands another figure, an apprentice, judging by the oversized smock, holding a bowl. It glints in the moonlight. You realize with the same dread you'd feel watching someone reach for a spoon in a wasp nest. It's bleeding time. You edge closer. The physician steps forward and raises his hand. Waning moon would be better, he announces to no one in particular, but the fever's pushing bile up. If we wait, it'll reach the heart. People nod like this makes sense. Maybe it does here. Maybe it always has. You crouch beside the patient. He's shivering now, eyes wide. He sees the moon overhead and begins to whisper something under his breath. Prayers, or maybe just the word cold over and over. Mainstream medicine moment. Bloodletting was a standard medical treatment in medieval Europe. Based on the theory of humors, it aimed to restore balance by removing excess fluids, usually blood. Physicians often consulted moon phases before deciding when and how much to bleed. The logic: the full moon was thought to expand fluids, so releasing blood then was risky. It could cause sudden weakness, or worse, invite madness. But tonight they're doing it anyway. The apprentice tightens a cloth around the patient's upper arm. The physician selects a knife, small, sharp, likely passed down for generations, and makes a shallow incision. The blood comes slowly at first, then in dark, steady rhythm. Someone holds the bowl beneath. You try not to stare. The patient breathes faster. The crowd leans in. And above it all, the moon watches unmoving. A quirky detail: some healers believed that certain veins were ruled by different zodiac signs, and that bloodletting should only occur when the moon was not in the sign associated with the organ in question. For example, never bleed the head when the moon is in Aries. Never bleed the feet under Pisces. This made scheduling a medieval medical procedure feel like planning a wedding with 12 unstable in-laws. You hear someone behind you whisper, if he starts babbling, it's the moon inside him. You turn. It's the same woman from the sick room earlier, now clutching a sprig of dried lavender. He'll either sweat it out, she says, or wake up speaking in riddles. You nod, because what else is there to do? The bowl is now half full. The physician nods to the apprentice, who releases the cloth and applies a mossy poultice to the wound. Not antiseptic, just something cooling, soothing, science-adjacent. Scientists still argue whether bloodletting had any measurable benefit. Some believe that in very specific cases, like polycythemia, it may have helped. Others say the perceived effects were placebo, or the result of the fever breaking on its own. But one thing is certain: the lunar timing? Probably unnecessary. You look back at the patient. He's sweating now, eyes fluttering, maybe dreaming. Someone covers him with a wool blanket, the kind that smells like damp herbs and fear. The candles flicker. The crowd murmurs its approval. The bowl is passed around briefly, as if sharing in the ritual, and then it's done. The physician wipes his hands and looks up at the moon, as though waiting for approval. None comes. But no disaster either. Balance in its way has been restored. You walk away from the square, the sound of footsteps and whispered prayers fading behind you. The blood has been spilled. The humors they hope are satisfied, and the moon continues on its arc, indifferent as ever. You wonder how many people have been bled under this sky. How many of them thanked the stars afterward? How many of them survived? You pass a small stream and hear it trickling beneath a mossy stone bridge. The moon's reflection shimmers in the water, warping with every ripple. It looks almost thoughtful, almost regretful. You crouch beside it and look in. And for a moment, your reflection isn't alone. The moon is there too, watching, always watching. You leave the bloodletting circle behind, walking deeper into the village where the torches give way to starlight and moonlight alone. It's quiet here, the kind of quiet that hums in your ears, as if your body is trying to fill the silence with its own sounds. Footsteps, breath, that tiny voice in your head wondering if you too have a spleen that misbehaves during a full moon. You round a bend and find yourself in front of a small apothecary. The doors ajar, the interior glowing with candlelight that flickers against rows of dusty jars and faded scrolls. You step inside. Behind the counter is a man who looks like he hasn't blinked since the last eclipse. He's hunched over a parchment covered in circles, astrological charts, tiny inked symbols, moons, planets, sigils surround human body diagrams. It looks more like a wizard's cheat sheet than anything medical. He doesn't look up. "You're here about the cough," he says. You are not, but sure. He dips a finger in a bowl of dried herbs. "Moon's in Virgo means the lungs are listening. Try boiled thyme with honey, but only if the moon's rising." You glance at the parchment again. It's nonsense. It's art. And it's somehow both wrong and oddly right. Mainstream historical fact. In medieval Europe, astrology was a standard diagnostic tool. Doctors, especially educated ones, consulted star charts to determine the best time for treatment. They aligned planetary movement with bodily health. Each zodiac sign was linked to specific organs, and the moon was the most immediate, most emotionally chaotic influence. It was believed to control fluids, growth, fertility, even digestion. You examine the shelves. There are jars labeled with plant names and cryptic instructions. Harvest only at moonrise. Mix during waning crescent. Apply before dreams begin. You raise an eyebrow. The apothecary finally looks up. "Don't laugh," he says. "The herbs know what the sky is doing." You want to respond with something clever, but part of you wonders, what if they do? He pulls down a jar filled with violet petals. "Moonflowers," he says. "Open only at night." You think that's coincidence? You say nothing. He places the jar beside another one, charcoal black. "Wormwood," he says, "for dreams too loud to ignore. Only safe when the moon is shrinking." You pick up a third jar, inside something pale and cloudy. "What's this?" you ask. He smiles. "Distilled dew, collected during the full moon. Best mixed with silver." You put it back gently, unsure if he's serious or selling you the most atmospheric marketing pitch in medieval history. A quirky note. Some physicians believe that herbs gained additional potency when harvested or prepared under certain lunar phases. The idea was that the moon's influence flowed through the plant world as it did through the human body. So timing your potion with the cosmos was just good practice. Moonrise rosemary, waning garlic, eclipse balm. You sit down at the bench across from him. He begins grinding something in a stone mortar, rhythm steady, hypnotic. The room smells of earth and candle smoke, crushed mint, and something faintly metallic. You ask, do you really think the moon affects the body? He stops grinding. Neil looks up. Do you really think it doesn't? You pause. He leans back. Tides, women's cycles, dreams, madness, sleep. You really think the sky can pull the oceans, but not you? It's hard to argue with that when your blood is technically 50% water and your sleep schedule collapses every full moon, whether you believe in lunar power or not. Scientists still argue whether there's any measurable lunar effect on human biology. Some studies suggest minor changes in sleep patterns, birth rates, or seizure activity during full moons. Others find no correlation at all. The results are muddy, much like moonlight. The apothecary hands you a small pouch. For your cough, he says, even if you don't have one, you take it because why not? He lights a bundle of dried sage. The room fills with smoke. He waves it gently toward the door and mutters a phrase that sounds like a bedtime wish mixed with a weather report. You step outside. The stars feel closer now. The village quieter. The moon brighter. You don't know what's in the pouch. But it smells safe. It smells old. It smells like someone once cared enough to mix science and myth into the same jar and just hope it worked. You tuck it into your pocket and keep walking. You follow the dirt path behind the apothecary, winding through hedges that glisten faintly under moonlight. Dew clings to every blade of grass like the village has been gently weeping all evening. The air is cooler now, crisper, thinner, like it's been filtered through centuries of herbal smoke and whispered warnings. You pass a wooden gate and come upon a small chapel, barely more than a stone box with a roof, but people are gathered outside it, not for prayer, for conversation, quiet, urgent conversation. You drift closer and catch fragments of their voices. "Tit mad again last night. He tore the sheets. One didn't sleep at all, just stared out the window. And the moon's too strong this month. It's the blood again." They sound afraid, not of a person exactly, but of something inside the people they love. Something the moon knows how to wake up. And you realize what they're talking about: moon madness. Mainstream theory moment. The word lunatic comes from luna, Latin for moon. In medieval medicine, it was believed that the full moon could disturb the mind, especially in those already afflicted with melancholia or nervous imbalances. Some believed it caused the brain to swell, the blood to heat, or the soul to drift slightly out of the body. The technical term? Lunar influence on the humoral balance. The popular term? Cursed by the sky. You sit quietly on a nearby stone bench as an older woman speaks. "He never used to be like this," she says. "But since the last harvest moon, he hears music that isn't there. Talks to the wall. Says the stars are watching his kidneys." You raise your eyebrows. That's specific. Another woman nods. "My cousin howls at windows now, but only on full moons. We keep him in the cellar. It's safer." A man sighs. "Maybe we're all mad. Maybe the moon just makes it obvious." A younger voice chimes in. "It's the bile. Father says yellow bile rises when the moon is high." You want to ask how bile knows what phase the moon is in. But at this point, you're more afraid the bile does know. A quirky historical tidbit. In some medieval texts, melancholia was described as a disease of the night, provoked by moonlight and prolonged wakefulness. Treatments included cooling herbs, baths infused with rose petals, avoidance of loud sounds, and sometimes a piece of iron placed under the bed to anchor the mind. You look up at the moon again. It seems unbothered. Bright, round, almost smug, Scientists still argue whether lunar phases actually affect human behavior. Some studies claim an increase in ER visits, animal bites, or erratic sleep during full moons. Others call it statistical noise, proof only of our ability to find patterns in chaos, or maybe to blame the moon when nothing else makes sense. You step away from the group and stroll through the chapel's small garden. Herbs grow here, half wild. Lavender, thyme, something that might be mugwort if you squint and squint again. Someone has tied thin ribbons around the tallest stalks, offerings or reminders or both. You crouch and sniff a bundle of rosemary. It smells clean. Son, sun, like it's trying to help. You lie back on a patch of grass between the garden rows. The moonlight rests on your face like a cool cloth. Not heavy, not urgent, just present. And you begin to imagine a brain like a tide pool, filled with thought and fear and fluid, and above it the moon pulling softly, not controlling, just influencing, just suggesting. And in that suggestion, you feel a kind of peace, because maybe it's okay to blame the moon sometimes. Maybe it's comforting to think madness is just misplaced moonlight and not something permanently broken inside. You close your eyes, and the voices drift into silence, and the moon waits, like it always does. You wake, not from sleep, but from stillness, the kind that wraps around your limbs like a velvet curtain and makes you forget where one breath ends and another begins. The moon hasn't moved much. It never really seems to. When you're watching it, you sit up slowly, brushing bits of grass from your coat, and begin walking again. The path leads you down toward a stream where the trees lean in just enough to make the moonlight flicker like candlelight. There's a man kneeling at the edge of the water. He dips a wooden cup, watches the ripples, then pours it back, over and over. A small ritual with no clear purpose. You ask gently, "What are you doing?" He glances up and without hesitation says, "Checking the tides in my veins." You wait for a punchline. It doesn't come. He sets the cup down and touches his neck, then his wrist as if taking his own pulse. "The moon pulls the seas," he says. "Why not blood?" Mainstream fact check. This was a common belief in the medieval period. If the moon could move oceans, surely it could influence the fluids in our bodies. After all, human bodies are mostly water. It made a sort of poetic, gravity-free sense. Medieval physicians taught that blood rose during the waxing moon and fell with the waning one. Fevers, swelling, and internal tides, they were all in part lunar. You kneel beside him and dip your fingers into the stream. It's cold, fast, constant. You try to imagine your blood responding to the sky like this, rising, receding, pulled not by reason, but by rhythm. He hands you the wooden cup. You fill it and hold it to the moonlight. It gleams faintly, no secrets, just reflection. "Did you know," he says, "that if you bleed someone at high tide, the wound may not close?" You raise an eyebrow. He nods solemnly. "That's why we do it when the tide is low. The moon lets go." A quirky footnote. Some coastal physicians in medieval England and France did, in fact, coordinate medical procedures with both lunar phase and sea tide, believing them inseparable. While not supported by modern biology, it was part of an early attempt to synchronize treatment with natural cycles. You look at the man again. He doesn't seem mad. He seems attuned, like he's listening to something you haven't been trained to hear. Scientists still argue whether human behavior is measurably altered by lunar gravity. The truth? The moon's gravitational pull on a human body is minuscule, less than that of a parked car 3 feet away. So no, your blood doesn't slosh around like soup in a moon-pulled pot. But try telling that to a 13th century herbalist with a fever chart and a window view. You sit in silence, the stream whispering beside you, And think about the longing behind the theory, the desire for order, for explanation. If you're tired, maybe it's because the moon is full. If you're angry, maybe it's because your bile is high. If your heart is broken, maybe the stars weren't aligned. It's not foolishness, it's softness. It's what happens when you give fear a sky to live in. You lean back against a mossy stone, the cup still in your hand, and close your eyes. You let the idea wash over you, not because it's true, but because it's beautiful. That your body is part of the sea, that your blood listens to the moon, that something as quiet as silver light could explain the swirl of you. You smile, then rise, and hand the cup back to the man. He nods, not in thanks, but in understanding. And you walk on. Because the moon is still high, and there's more to feel beneath it. You walk now with slower steps, your boots barely pressing into the damp grass. The path has narrowed to something more symbolic than real, a corridor between low shrubs and thick air. It smells like chamomile and maybe a little like old parchment. The moon hovers just above the treetops now, casting that soft, pale light that makes the world feel paused. And then you hear something, pages turning. You follow the sound until it leads you to a stone bench beneath an arching tree, where a scholar sits hunched over a thick, bound book. He doesn't notice you at first. His lips are moving slightly, reading aloud under his breath. The text is Latin, or maybe Old French, but the tone is universal. Quiet confusion trying to sound confident. You clear your throat gently. He glances up and smiles. You've come to learn about the moist brain, haven't you? You blink. That wasn't what I expected. He gestures for you to sit. You do. He flips the book around and points to an illustration. A human head, cracked open like a melon, the brain drawn like a sponge, dripping, swollen, soaked. Above it, a full moon, hovering like a lidless eye. Medieval theory, as he says, suggested that the brain was a moist organ governed by moonlight. Full moons encouraged excess moisture, leading to confusion, hallucinations, and what they called luna morbis, the sickness of the moon. You nod slowly. So, soggy brain? Precisely. Mainstream science moment. In medieval humoral theory, the brain was believed to be one of the wet organs, along with the lungs and liver. It was thought that excessive moisture in the brain caused mental imbalance. A full moon, with its supposed ability to draw out fluids, was believed to amplify this moistness, leading to episodes of delirium, sleepwalking, or prophetic dreams. The scholar turns the page to another diagram, this one more ominous. A man is shown walking into the sea led by the moon. His eyes are wide, his arms are slack. Lunar drowning of the senses, the scholar mutters. Common enough back then. You ask if the treatment was drying herbs or maybe a towel to the forehead. He smiles. In extreme cases, trepanning. You go very still. They drilled holes? To let the moon out, he says, not even joking. A quirky detail. In some parts of medieval Europe, people suffering from lunar madness were advised to sleep with their heads turned away from windows. Some texts recommended placing iron or stone beneath the pillow to weigh down the mind. In rare, unfortunate cases, trepanning was used to relieve pressure and vent lunar influence. The results were as medieval as you'd imagine. You lean back on the bench and look up at the sky. The moon doesn't look dangerous. It looks dreamy, distant. You try to picture it seeping into your skull like steam through old stone, curling around memories and dreams and loose thoughts. It's oddly believable in a poetic way. The scholar closes the book with a soft thud. They didn't understand the brain, he says, but they understood stories. Scientists still debate whether full moons impact sleep, mood, or neurological patterns. Some research shows slight decreases in REM sleep during full moons. Others find no significant trends. But what persists, what truly matters, is how consistent the belief has been across cultures and centuries. That the moon somehow gets into your head. You thank the scholar and rise to leave. He nods and goes back to his book, murmuring something about salt and stars. You walk away through the trees, brushing your hand along the branches. You feel calm, thoughtful, a little damp in the brain maybe, but not in a bad way. You imagine yourself under a medieval diagnosis. Too much lunar vapor, mildly melancholic with a tendency to overthink? Sounds about right. As you rejoin the path, a breeze rustles the trees, and you swear it sounds like whispering. Not threatening, just conversational. Maybe it's the wind. Maybe it's the moon. Either way, you're listening now. You follow the sound. Deeper into the night, deeper into the humors, and deeper into a mind the moon has gently soaked. The path winds now, curling like a question mark through the woods. You follow it not because you know where it leads, but because the moonlight makes it look like it wants to be followed. Every bend feels intentional. Every shadow seems like a story waiting to be told. You hear footsteps, not yours, approaching from the other side of the hill. A flicker of torchlight bobs between the trees. Then they emerge, a group of four, wrapped in woolen cloaks and fur, pulling behind them a cart filled with bundles. Not food, not tools, blankets, all stitched with silver thread. One of them, a tall woman with an amused smile and the posture of someone used to being listened to, waves you over. "You're just in time," she says. You ask 'em for what? She points to the hilltop. "To watch the moon take the womb." You pause, then follow them up the slope. And at the top there's a circle, stone-marked, fire-lit, arranged with cushions. They're preparing for lunar healing, or, as one of them calls it, keeping the uterus properly behaved. Mainstream history moment. In medieval medicine, the female body was seen as particularly susceptible to lunar influence. The moon was associated with cycles, both menstrual and tidal. Medical texts describe the uterus as a wandering organ, prone to shifting, swelling, or even choking the throat if not appeased. Full moons were considered a dangerous time for female imbalance. You sit on one of the cushions and try not to look confused as the tall woman unwraps a bundle and pulls out a carved wooden moon mask. She hands it to the youngest girl in the group, who places it gently over her own face and lies back. "She's had cramps," the woman explains, "so we're anchoring her to the moon's patience." You nod slowly. You have no idea what that means. Another member of the group rings a bell, soft, high-pitched. Then another begins humming, a low, droning tone. It's not dissonant. It's not melodic either. It's just continuous. You sit very still, and for some reason your shoulders relax. A quirky historical footnote. In medieval Europe and parts of the Islamic world, women were often treated with moon rituals for a variety of conditions: infertility, irregular cycles, hysteria, a catch-all term for any emotional distress, and even sleepwalking. Some practices involved chanting to the moon. Others included burying objects in moonlight or applying silver-infused oils to the abdomen. You glance around the circle. Everyone here believes this, and not passively. They believe it with a kind of softness that feels more reassuring than medical charts and Latin syllables. You look up at the moon. It's framed perfectly by the clearing's arching trees, a silver coin floating on a black velvet sky. It's not doing anything, and yet everything seems to revolve around it tonight. The youngest girl stirs beneath the mask. "She's breathing deeper now," one of the women whispers. "It's working?" You ask, "Do you think the moon actually hears us?" The tall woman smiles. "It doesn't have to. We're the ones who need to listen." Scientists still argue whether the lunar cycle truly influences the menstrual cycle. There are overlaps, yes. Both hover around 28 days. But modern research offers mixed conclusions. Some studies suggest more synchronized cycles under natural moonlight. Others call it coincidence. But to these women and the countless ones before them, the moon isn't just a nightlight, it's a partner. The hum fades. The bell rings once more. The girl sits up slowly and removes the mask. Her cheeks are flushed, her eyes calm. Better, she says. Everyone smiles. No applause, no diagnosis, no side effects. Just better. The tall woman turns to you. The moon gives. The moon takes. We just make space. You rise with them as they begin to gather their things. The cart creaks softly under the weight of their bundles. The fire dims itself. The circle, once a sacred space, becomes just another patch of grass again. But something lingers. Not the ritual. Not even the moon. Just the idea that your body might respond to rhythm. That wellness could be a kind of alignment. That healing doesn't always have to be loud to be real. You walk with them back toward the tree line, the moon at your back, and something else, even quieter, moving gently inside you. The woods give way to a clearing shaped like a bowl, tucked gently between hills, as if the land itself is settling in for sleep. You arrive just behind the group of moon healers, but they peel away quietly, slipping down another trail like mist receding from stone. You're alone again, just you, the grass, and the sky's slow breathing. There's a low stone building ahead, its roof mossy, its windows round and glowing. You approach, expecting silence, but what you hear instead is counting. You step inside. The air smells of wax and damp parchment. Long tables stretch across the room, each one lined with monks hunched over paper, but they're not copying scripture tonight. They're charting the moon. Every parchment is covered in numbers, circles, calculations. You move quietly among them, passing formulas, star maps, and a surprisingly detailed drawing of what appears to be a diseased pancreas, labeled with a lunar phase. A thin monk in a dark robe gestures you over and slides a scroll your way. It's the divine ratio of lunar days to humoral cycles, he says, as though that explains anything. You sit beside him trying to make sense of the symbols. He taps one chart. We've mapped fevers to the moon for 63 years, he says. Night fevers peak during waxing gibbous. Coughs prefer waning moons. Boils rise at first quarter. All recorded, all counted. Mainstream science moment. During the Middle Ages, monasteries were among the most consistent keepers of medical data. Many monks tracked lunar phases alongside illness patterns, believing that aligning treatment with celestial timing brought better outcomes. The moon's phases were seen not just as symbolic, but mathematical, capable of influencing cycles of disease. You point to a jagged line that rises and falls across the chart. Liver swelling, the monk says, with each full moon, never fails. He turns to a tall cabinet behind him and retrieves a dusty volume thicker than your thigh. Inside, patient logs dating back centuries. Each entry includes date, symptoms, and moon phase. You read one aloud. 1347, Agnes of the South Field. Trembling, spots on legs, incoherent speech. Moon, waxing crescent. Diagnosis, moist brain, impending sweating sickness. Treatment, sage poultice, avoidance of mirrors. The monk nods. Textbook case. You flip forward. 1371. Brother Elric. Confessed to hearing voices in the fireplace. Moon, full. Treatment, prayer, leeches, and sleeping with an iron spoon under his tongue. You pause. The monk shrugs. He got better. A quirky detail. Some monastic hospitals use geometrically precise lunar calendars to schedule patient care. Phlebotomy tables, herb picking days, even confession times were plotted by moonlight. Illness wasn't just bodily, it was considered chronological. Recovery was a rhythm, and the moon kept the beat. Scientists still argue whether this data collection was proto-science or superstition in disguise. Some historians see value in the consistency of medieval lunar health logs, suggesting they helped shape early epidemiology. Others dismiss them as beautiful nonsense, proof that humans can turn any pattern into prophecy. You look around. The room is quiet except for the scratching of quills and the occasional soft cough. These monks aren't trying to prove anything. They're trying to understand. They're counting the things no one else notices. You ask the monk, "Do you think the moon actually changes anything?" He dips his quill again. "No, non," he says. "I think we change when we believe it does." You don't know whether that's wisdom or a loophole, but it feels true. You step back outside, blinking as your eyes adjust. The clearing is darker now. The moon tucks slightly behind a passing cloud. The silence settles again, deeper this time. You look up and wonder. If the moon can move the sea, and monks can map its math, and women can bleed in time with it, then maybe, just maybe, you've been part of its rhythm all along. You walk on, the ground beneath you softening as you leave the monastery behind. It's quiet again, but now it's the kind of quiet that comes after listening, when everything around you is the same, but you are slightly more tuned in. The trees thin out, and you find yourself crossing a meadow slick with dew. Your footsteps hush into the grass. Crickets murmur like they're unsure whether to keep singing under this bright moon. And then you see it, a small tent near the edge of the field. Thin smoke curls from a chimney poking through its roof. A soft glow leaks from between the seams. You approach. A voice calls out, casual as a neighbor over a garden wall. "Come in if you've nothing contagious." You step inside. The space is warmer than you expect. Lantern lit, herbal scented, and somehow crammed with both chaos and comfort. Charts hang from every beam. Pots of boiling liquid simmer over a small fire. A woman with streaks of ash on her sleeves and ink on her forehead is hunched over a map of stars. You say nothing. She points at a stool. "I'm calculating the next plague window," she says. You blink. "I'm sorry, what?" She gestures at the ceiling, which is strung with dozens of hanging spheres, each labeled with a planet, a phase, a date. "People always think plagues come from rats or air or filth," she says, "but really they come from alignments. Saturn, Mars, the moon. It's choreography." You sit because standing feels rude in the face of that much confidence. Mainstream fact moment. In the medieval era, many physicians believed that celestial alignments cause disease outbreaks. This idea came from ancient texts, especially the influential Timaeus by Plato and later Islamic medical scholars. The 1347 Black Death, for example, was widely blamed on the conjunction of Saturn, Jupiter, and Mars under a corrupt moon. Germ theory? Still centuries away. The woman picks up a chart and holds it to the light. It's not just moon phases, it's planetary positions, eclipses, retrogrades, even weather patterns. The kind of document you'd get if an astrologer and a conspiracy theorist collaborated in a fever dream. You ask, "So, the moon causes illness?" She grins. "Not exactly, it permits it, weakens the barriers, makes the humors more reckless." You glance at a table filled with labeled vials. One reads, "For moon-bloated lung." Another, "Saturn's spine tonic." A third simply says, "Do not drink." You don't touch that one. A quirky belief, in the 14th century, Some doctors carried astrological almanacs instead of anatomy books. Diagnosis was a matter of timing. If someone fell ill under a waning moon while Mars was in opposition, that might be hot, dry bile, and the treatment would involve cooling herbs, withdrawal from bright light, and probably leeches. Because leeches were always somehow the backup plan. You ask how long she's been doing this. Since I was a child, she says. My mother blamed the moon for my birthmark, said it was the mark of a healer or a werewolf, depending on the day. She offers you a steaming cup of something. It smells like ginger and possibility. You sip, it burns, not in a bad way. She studies the sky again, pulling a leather-bound volume from a shelf. This moon won't bring fever, she says, but it might bring forgetfulness. You nod because, honestly, that sounds kind of nice. She flips to a page showing the moon's effect on the spleen, annotated in ink and flower petals. You ask, do people believe you? Sometimes, she says, and when they don't, they still sleep better knowing someone's tracking the sky for them. Scientists still argue whether there was any value to lunar plague theory. While we know disease is caused by pathogens, historians note that celestial models provided structure, a way to manage chaos when the world was full of it. Even if the causes were wrong, the patterns help people feel prepared. You finish your cup. The tent feels heavier now, not in weight, but in meaning. Like you've stepped inside someone's lifetime of observation and instinct and made it all real by listening. The woman smiles again. The moon doesn't heal, she says. It doesn't hurt. It just reveals. You step outside. The moon has shifted, only slightly, but enough to make the world feel tilted in a different direction. You look back once. The smoke rises gently from the chimney, curling toward the stars. You walk on, somehow both heavier and lighter. You move past the meadow and into a thicket of trees, where the light from the moon slants through branches like it's being politely filtered. The ground is springy with fallen leaves, the air scented with moss and something slightly metallic, like water that remembers having once been inside stone. The world has grown quieter again, not just in sound, but in intent. Then you see a lantern flickering in the distance, swinging gently from a crooked wooden post beside a low hut. Its windows glow orange, and from inside you hear soft coughing, murmured words, and the careful steps of someone pacing on worn wooden floors. You push the door open slowly. Inside is a small healing room, simple and clean, with herbs hanging in bundles from the ceiling and a single patient resting on a straw-stuffed mattress. Beside the bed, a healer moves with practiced grace, adjusting a cloth, checking the patient's breath, and you notice marking something on a wax tablet each time the moonlight shifts across the floor. You step closer and glance at the tablet. Lines, dots, lunar symbols, and what looks like a recovery timeline, based entirely on the moon's cycle. She's on the 6th night of the waxing crescent, the healer whispers, nodding at the patient. We expect improvement when the moon rounds out. You raise an eyebrow. You're timing her recovery with the moon? Of course, Worm, the healer says, as though you've asked whether water is wet. Mainstream historical truth. In many parts of medieval Europe, lunar cycles were used to chart illness progression. Healers believed that certain moon phases could influence the body's ability to fight disease. The full moon was often considered dangerous for recovery. It stirred the blood and the mind. The new moon? A time of renewal. Healing was, in essence, a celestial stopwatch. The healer returns to the patient, lifting her wrist, counting quietly. You sit nearby, watching the moonlight inch across the room. Every flicker feels choreographed, not rushed, not random. You ask gently, does it actually work? The healer doesn't answer right away. Instead, she dips a cloth into a bowl of steeped herbs and gently wipes the patient's brow. The woman in the bed stirs but doesn't wake. It gives us something to follow, the healer finally says. A rhythm, a shape. When the illness feels endless, the moon gives it an outline. You nod, understanding more than you expected to. A quirky practice. Some medieval hospitals place lunar calendars above each bed, allowing staff to track treatments based on the moon's progress. Bleedings, purges, and tonics were scheduled accordingly. Even rest days were marked. No interventions during eclipses, for example, when the moon was said to be hiding its light from the sick. You glance again at the wax tablet. The current phase is etched beside a list of remedies. Marjoram for lungs, mint for clarity, sleep with silver coin beneath the tongue. You almost ask about the coin, but decide to let the mystery live. Scientists still argue whether this kind of tracking was harmful, helpful, or just harmless ritual. While it lacked modern accuracy, some researchers now believe that the consistency of care, the rhythm of time check-ins, even if based on flawed models, may have supported recovery more than we realize. Not the moon, the meaning. You sit back watching the healer work. It's not hurried. There are no beeping machines, no sterile gloves, just the warm hush of ritual, of presence, of belief layered into routine. Outside, the wind shifts. The moon slips behind a cloud, and the healer lights a small oil lamp, keeping the rhythm intact. "I'll wake her before the moon set," she says, as if that's part of the prescription. You stand slowly, and before leaving, you glance back one last time. The patient's breathing has deepened. The healer's shoulders have relaxed. The moon will rise again tomorrow, and the chart will move forward. Like a tide with no urgency, but perfect memory. You step outside, and once more the sky feels witnessed. The path ahead is quieter than ever, and for the first time, it feels like you're walking not through space, but through time. Each step lands softly, like you're treading on the edge of a forgotten dream. You pass a stone wall overtaken by ivy and lichen, then cross a bridge so old the moss on its railing has grown its own folklore. You follow a trail of lanterns into the next hollow, and that's where you see them. Rows of people lying on thin mats beneath the stars. Their eyes are closed. Their chests rise and fall in the slow cadence of sleep, or something just next to it. You step closer and realize this isn't a camp. It's a kind of moon-watching ward. And seated at the edge of it all is an older man with a leather-bound journal, scribbling furiously with a quill while balancing a cup of tea on his knee. He doesn't look up when he speaks. "They're dreaming. We record it. Every full moon." You lower your voice instinctively. "All of them?" He nods. "We call it the lunar registry of night thought." "Of course you do." Mainstream theory moment. Medieval scholars believed that the moon governed not only sleep, but the quality and content of dreams. Lunacy, somnambulism, prophetic visions, these were all linked to moonlight. Physicians, monks, and astrologers kept dream logs tied to lunar phases, hoping to map the mind by moon. You peer at his journal. It's dense with notations, dates, moon signs, dream descriptions. One entry reads, "Full moon. Woman dreamed of teeth crumbling into glass. Prescribed violet tincture." Another, "Waxing crescent. Boy dreamed of a door that wouldn't open. Given time and silence." You ask what he's looking for. "Patterns," he says, sipping his tea. "The moon may not speak, but it echoes." You glance over the rows of dreamers. Some shift gently in sleep. Some murmur. One laughs, a soft, delighted sound that vanishes into the trees. A quirky medieval belief. Certain dreams were only considered valid or prophetic if they occurred during specific moon phases. A dream during a waxing moon might signal gain. A dream during a waning moon, loss. Eclipses were chaotic. Dreams from those nights were considered suspect, erratic, even dangerous. You ask, do the dreams change with the moon? The man closes his journal and finally looks up. Of course, don't yours? You pause. Because maybe, yes, you remember those nights when the full moon slips through your blinds and sleep feels fragmented, like static just under the skin. Or the new moons when dreams feel soft and far away, like messages carried by fog. Scientists still argue whether lunar phases measurably affect REM cycles or sleep depth. Some studies suggest a slight correlation, reduced deep sleep during full moons, more wakefulness. Others find no consistent pattern, but even skeptics agree. People feel the moon. The man returns to writing. You sit down near the edge of the sleepers, careful not to disturb them. They lie beneath soft blankets, some curled, some open to the stars. Their breath moves like waves. You listen. Each exhale a tide, each sigh a lunar pulse. You lie back as well, staring at the open sky. The moon is just overhead now, full and unapologetically bright. You close your eyes, not to sleep, but to drift near it. And in the silence, a dream begins to take shape. Not vivid, not clear, just an image. A mirror made of moonlight. You step into it. Inside is a room with no doors and a single book, your name on the spine. You open it. The pages are soft and mostly blank. Waiting. You open your eyes. The others are still sleeping. The man is still writing, and the moon has moved ever so slightly toward the west. You rise slowly, quietly, and keep walking, back into the night that feels less like darkness now, and more like a silver thread pulled gently through every thought you've ever had. You pass through the sleepers with the same reverence you'd use crossing a library at midnight, each body a closed book, dreaming its way through a silent moonlit chapter. The ground softens again, shifting from soil to sand as you descend toward what sounds unmistakably like waves. Soon you stand before a narrow cliff path above a dark, rippling sea. The moon reflects perfectly on the surface below, one half floating in the water, the other still staring down from the sky. You can't help but feel surrounded. And then from the rocks ahead comes the low murmur of voices. You follow the sound and find a small group standing around a stone altar, robes fluttering gently in the wind. Their heads are bowed. One holds a book, another a cross, and beside them, a man in simple garb holds a moon chart, not stars this time, but dates and orbits. It's a priest and a physician, together, reading the sky. You stay at a distance, half hidden by a stone outcrop, and listen. Yes, but man is not ruled by the moon, the priest says firmly, voice sharp against the wind. He is ruled by God. The physician doesn't look up. God made the moon. Are we to ignore his clock? A pause. You lean in. The moon deceives, the priest adds. It draws man to madness, to abandon faith in divine reason. And yet it lights the night, the physician replies. What else does he intend it for? Mainstream history moment. In medieval Europe, there was conflict between church doctrine and natural astrology-based medicine. While the church accepted the moon's physical existence, it often rejected medical astrology as a gateway to superstition, even heresy. Some physicians walked a fine line, balancing lunar timing with religious humility. Others abandoned charts for prayer alone. You shift your weight, careful not to make a sound. They begin packing up their tools, cross and chart, scripture and scribbles, neither conceding, neither winning. It's not a debate. It's a duet, uncomfortable, unresolved, and still happening in some form today. A quirky bit of history. There were entire medieval texts dedicated to reconciling God's will with lunar influence, often claiming that the moon was God's assistant, offering physical signals to guide treatment, but never to replace divine authority. Some physicians inscribed prayers in their charts, Others disguised astrology with Latin euphemisms like divine cycles of influence. The priest lights a small lamp and whispers a benediction to the moon, not a prayer to it, but through it. A middle path, a bridge. You think about your own internal tug-of-war between logic and intuition, between data and dreams, between what you know and what you hope might still be true. Scientists still argue whether lunar belief systems delayed medical progress or, in fact, encouraged closer observation of natural cycles. Some say the Church's skepticism saved medicine from collapsing into mysticism. Others say it cost us centuries of insight hidden in the celestial patterns. The group departs, leaving the altar empty. You approach it slowly. On its surface is a stone bowl filled with water. The moon reflects in it perfectly. You reach out, but just before your finger touches the water, you pause. Because isn't that the choice? To disturb the reflection or to let it stay? You leave it unbroken and sit beside the altar. The moon above is framed now by wisps of cloud, moving like thin drapes across a giant eye. The waves crash far below in a rhythm that doesn't match your heartbeat, but somehow feels like it should. You stare at the moon's reflection in the water, and this time, you whisper something. Not a prayer, just a wondering. Do you guide us? Or do we guide ourselves by pretending you do? No answer, just light. The cliff path narrows again as you leave the altar behind, winding like a question with no intention of being answered. The sea below keeps murmuring, patient and unconcerned, as if it's been eavesdropping on the debate between priest and physician for centuries, and has decided to stay out of it. You walk inland now. The terrain shifts from wind-scoured rock to soft meadow once more, dotted with standing stones like forgotten exclamation marks in a very old sentence. And then you stumble upon something unexpected. Ruins. A crumbling stone structure with no roof, partially swallowed by moss and time. Vines trace faded inscriptions on the walls. You step carefully inside, brushing aside a curtain of ivy. There on the inner wall is a familiar shape. The moon, not carved as a symbol or decoration, but as a calendar. Mainstream history moment. Some medieval medical schools and abbeys constructed lunar-based healing calendars, etched into stone or painted on walls. These were practical tools. Each phase of the moon was linked to a bodily function or treatment guideline. They didn't just consult the moon, they recorded its effects one cycle at a time. This one is beautiful, etched with care. Each phase marked with corresponding notes. Do not cut flesh. Good for purging. Apply iron tonic. Avoid intercourse. Pray for balance. You touch the stone lightly. It's cool but not unfriendly, as though it remembers being useful, as though it's waiting for someone to care again. You walk through what was once a treatment room, judging by the stone bench and an old ceramic bowl still resting in a corner. You wonder what kind of medicine was practiced here. You wonder who tracked their hopes with chalk and stars. And then you notice another wall, this one faded almost to invisibility. You step closer and realize what you're looking at, modern graffiti. A soft charcoal message. Still true, it reads. You smile. A quirky insight. Even today, many modern people track their moods, sleep, or cycles using lunar calendars. Some therapists use moon phases as metaphors for emotional processing. Some fitness trackers offer moon phase icons as a kind of gentle reminder that nature has always run in loops. You sit on the old bench and pull out a scrap of paper, maybe from your pocket, maybe from somewhere older, and begin jotting your own observations. Night of full moon, dreamed in color. Waning moon, woke rested. New moon, lonelier than usual. Waxing crescent, wrote something honest. You don't know if it's science or sentiment, but it feels worth remembering. Scientists still argue whether belief systems like lunar medicine are artifacts of superstition or signals of deeper psychological truths. Some say it's projection. Others suggest our biology evolved to sync with moonlight long before electricity tricked us into thinking we're independent from it. You tuck your notes away and rise, brushing dust from your hands. You look around the ruin one last time, seeing not just what's been lost, but what's been left. A structure designed to slow people down, to remind them of rhythm, to put healing into something you can see in the sky. You step back out into the moonlight, and everything looks slightly more alive, slightly more intentional. The grass bends gently in the breeze, and you think, maybe this is the truest legacy of medieval moon medicine. Not accuracy, but attentiveness. Not the science of knowing, but the art of noticing. You walk on, feeling the ground a little more clearly beneath your feet. Not because you figured anything out, but because for once, you're walking in time. The moon is starting its slow descent now, brushing the tops of trees with fading silver, like a painter delicately cleaning the final edge of a canvas. You walk beneath its light, your shadow longer than it's been all night. It no longer stretches ahead of you, but beside you, like a quiet companion walking you home. The path leads through one final clearing. Here a ring of stones sits in the grass. Not perfect, not symmetrical, just worn and peaceful, arranged with more feeling than geometry. You walk into the center and sit. You don't say anything, neither does the moon. But the silence between you both feels mutual. You look up at it, this perfect slow-turning object that's guided tides, dreams, fevers, and stories for as long as people have remembered to wonder. And you think about everything you've seen tonight, the bloodletting under its watchful eye, the astrologers who scribbled charts while drinking rosemary tea, the monks counting fevers like stars, the healers whispering to uteruses and giving silver to silence nightmares, the priest who feared the moon might rival God, the patient whose breath was timed to its curve, and you, drifting through it all like a satellite in soft shoes. Mainstream closing thought: we now know the moon does not govern your liver. It does not inflate your brain with moistness. It doesn't whisper madness into your dreams or pull disease through your skin like a magnetic ghost. But it might do something else. It might offer structure, a cycle, a reminder that nothing, neither illness, nor fear, nor sleeplessness, lasts forever. That the body, like the moon, waxes and wanes, that you can fall apart a little and still be whole again soon. A quirky modern echo. There are apps now, moon calendars with soothing fonts and cosmic color palettes. They don't pretend to cure anything, but they do say things like, tonight is a time for release, or the moon is waning, consider rest, which honestly might be enough. Scientists still argue whether the moon affects you, but you've already decided. Because sometimes science isn't about proof, it's about presence. You lie back on the mossy grass inside the stone circle and let the last of the moonlight fall onto your face. It's not bright now, just soft, diffused, a perfect metaphor for everything that can't quite be explained and still matters anyway. You breathe slowly. The wind rustles a few leaves. You close your eyes and the image of the moon lingers behind your lids like a fingerprint left on the soul. You are no longer a visitor in this night. You are a participant. And now, you rest. Let everything soften now. The body that carried you through medieval courtyards, mossy ruins, and moonlit altars deserves this moment. Let your breath fall into that slower rhythm, the one that doesn't try to prove anything, just exists. The moon is setting behind the hills, its work done for now. Whatever it stirred in you tonight, curiosity, comfort, nostalgia, laughter, it can settle back into stillness. You are not meant to carry it all, just to witness it. Let your shoulders ease down. Let your jaw unclench. Let your eyes rest gently shut, knowing there's nothing urgent in this moment, only cycles. Inhale and release. Let the thoughts arrive and pass like clouds across the lunar face. No judgment, no resistance. Imagine the moss beneath your head again, cool, gentle, patient. Above you, the sky slowly brightens with the first hints of a new day. But that's not for now. Now is for quiet. Now is for you. You've listened long enough to the world's oldest whisper, and whether or not the moon truly moved anything inside you tonight, you moved with it. And maybe that's enough. Sleep well, moon traveler. You've earned it.